Have you ever wondered why life hurts and why it hurts so badly right now? Frankl didn't speak these words from a mountaintop. He spoke them from inside a nightmare. He lost everything: his family, his freedom, his dignity, in a concentration camp. But even there, he refused to believe that life was meaningless. To him, pain wasn't something to escape. It was something to understand. He discovered that the human spirit could endure almost anything, as long as it knew why. And maybe that's the question you're facing too. Not how to avoid the pain, but what it's trying to tell you. Pain is the great interrupter. It doesn't wait until you have time. It doesn't ask for permission. It shows up uninvited, and when it does, it demands your full attention. It changes the way you walk through the world. It alters your rhythms. It makes you question things you thought were settled. But if you listen closely, there's a strange intelligence in your suffering, a whisper beneath the wailing. And that whisper isn't asking for you to fix everything. It's asking for your presence, your attention, your honesty. Because pain, at its core, is an invitation, not to be destroyed, but to be reborn. There's a moment in every life when something snaps, not always loudly. Sometimes it's quiet, a long stare into nothing, or a sudden realization while folding laundry. The world keeps spinning, the lights stay on, but you know something just changed. It's the moment you can no longer pretend. You've smiled for too long. You've agreed for too long. You've carried things that were never yours to carry, and your hands are trembling under the weight. You wake up one day and realize you've built a life that looks fine from the outside, but inside? It's a house with cracked foundations. It's quiet now, but something inside is caving in. You might still show up to work. You might still laugh at the jokes. You might still cook dinner, answer messages, pay bills. But there's an ache behind your eyes, a sense of living slightly out of sync, as if your soul is 2 steps behind your body. And when people ask how you are, you say, "I'm good," because how do you explain an unraveling? But you feel it, the tension in your back, the breath that never quite fills your lungs, the way your mind drifts when you try to focus, the fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. This is the breaking point, not a breakdown, a breakthrough. Because what's breaking isn't you, it's the illusion, the old story, the false self. And what comes next is something real. When everything collapses, you'd expect noise, chaos, fire. But often what comes next is silence. A silence that feels unnatural, a hush that wraps around you like fog. You are no longer running, but you are not yet healing. You are suspended in stillness, in limbo. The numbness sets in. You don't cry anymore because the tears have dried up. You don't fight anymore because you no longer believe there's a point. This is the hollowing. It's not peace. It's a quiet grief that lingers behind your ribs. You go through the motions, brush your teeth, fold your laundry, answer the emails. But it all feels muted, like you're underwater. Your mind replays moments on loop, things you said, things you didn't say, doors that closed, people who left, versions of yourself that died quietly in rooms no one saw. And still, no one sees. You walk through the world invisible, not because they can't see you, but because you don't know how to be seen. But in the silence, something waits. A seed, a spark, a faint heartbeat beneath the noise of memory. It doesn't ask for effort. It just asks for space. Pain, when we stop resisting it, starts to communicate. It shows up in your jaw when you speak words you don't mean, In your gut when you're in rooms that don't feel safe. In your chest when you betray your own boundaries. Pain isn't punishing you, it's pointing to the places that need your attention. It's your soul's way of saying, this doesn't align. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. And if we're brave enough to listen, pain becomes a compass. You start to ask different questions. What if this discomfort is asking me to change? What if this sadness is evidence of depth? What if this ache is not an enemy but a guide? You don't need to numb it. You need to learn from it. And that learning begins with one choice: to stop running. You slow down. You feel the tremors. You sit with the tears. You breathe through the shaking. And in that presence, the message becomes clearer. You are not meant to suffer endlessly, but you are meant to grow. And sometimes pain is the only voice loud enough to push you into that growth. Healing isn't always about feeling better. Sometimes it's about seeing clearer. You begin to notice moments. The friend who texted at the exact right time. The book that said exactly what you needed. The stranger who smiled when you felt invisible. You start connecting dots. You realize that even in your worst moments, you were being led. Not by luck, not by coincidence, but by something deeper, a thread of meaning. You see how the pain made you softer in places you used to be hard. You see how your anger was a shield for your grief. You see how your sadness taught you empathy. And you no longer resent the past. You begin to reframe it, not as failure, but as formation. Not as punishment, but as preparation. There's a quiet joy in this part of the journey, a gentle kind of strength. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be. The healing is in the integration. The wisdom is in the wound. And as you sit in the golden light of your own becoming, you begin to whisper, thank you. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it shaped you. Wholeness is not perfection. It is inclusion. It is saying, this too is part of me. You carry your story differently now. Not like a burden, like a compass. The cracks in you glow. The silence inside you hums. The parts you once hid now walk beside you. You are still healing. You are still unfolding. But you are home. The world is no less chaotic. But you are no longer at war with yourself. The voices of fear may still whisper, but you don't believe them like you used to. The sadness still visits, but it doesn't sink you. You have become a witness to your own transformation, not because the pain disappeared, but because you changed your relationship to it. You learned to breathe when it burned. You learned to rest when you felt ashamed. You learned to speak even when your voice trembled, and that's what courage looks like. That's what healing really is. Not a destination, but a quiet revolution, a slow return to your own soul. So maybe your pain wasn't weakness. Maybe it was your initiation into awareness, into alignment, into truth. And maybe, just maybe, the parts of you that hurt the most are the very parts that will lead you back to who you were always meant to be. Welcome home.